break because of Christmas and New Year's and going away to our holiday home. Here is the last part to my Q&A 2015. Late, I know, to get this finished. Just could not get the time to get this last section in before Christmas. Wearing my glasses so you know it's going to be a Q&A because I need to read these lists. So, without further ado, let's get into the final lot of questions. Okay, without further ado, let's get into the questions. Our first question is from iGuru Revolution. He asks, what projects are you looking to do in the near future? Well, at the moment I actually have quite a few homebrew projects on the go. I'm helping out with a Super Nintendo game, that's my primary focus at the moment. But my own projects after that are, I have my Meteor Swarm games going to come out for the original Nintendo, published in a cartridge in a box. That game is sort of mostly done, but I really want to focus on the Super Nintendo title at the moment, and so it'll probably be a month or so before I get to finishing that one off. That will probably be the next cab of the rank. I'm working on a couple of homebrew games for the MSX, Coleco and original Spectre Video. They get brought out for the Coleco first because that's the easiest to publish on, and then the MSX, but they're written so that they'll run on each. And I have, in no particular order, probably the latest one that I can announce is Berserk for the Coleco, which will include voice. And while I was on holidays, I actually worked out the maze logic, so it's arcade perfect maze logic. So that's an exciting little one. I also have Pixidis, which is my original shoot 'em up game for the Spectre Video and MSX. I have a Coleco version of that. That will be going to beta testing in a month or so as well. It's really just sound and a couple of little finishing things to do on that one. Another one of my games, it was unpublished back in the day, called Cavern Fighter, and that's basically a take on the classic game Scramble, and that will be coming out for the Coleco, MSX, Spectre Video and the original Nintendo. Because looking through the library, there is no conversion of Scramble for the original Nintendo, so I'm sure people out there would like that, and I'd like to have a go and seeing what I can do, because obviously Meteor Swarm's not really going to push the nest very much. Good fun game, but something like a Scramble clone with Cavern Fighter will be good fun. So lots of little projects. Number 2, if you could, what current gen game would you make a version of for the 8-bit computers? That's a difficult one. I suppose it would be a take. I mean, I do like some of the shooters with stories and things like that, but I mean, you have to think about practical. But maybe I actually quite like what another group's done and taken Grand Theft Auto concept and put it into an 8-bit environment. They're actually trying to make it for the Nintendo, but it was a bit too grandiose for that, and they've just made it in an 8-bit style game. So you do need to pick subjects that will match, but I'd really like something like the Alien Trilogy game on like the Saturn or anything like that, but done in a way that it would work on the 8-bit machines, because there really weren't a lot of games on Alien back in the day. There was quite a simple computer game based on the original Alien game, but they were very early on in the computer industry and there weren't a lot of later ones, so something like that would be interesting. If you could, what 8-bit computer game would you remake for the current gen? It's a slightly harder one, but because quite a lot of games have borrowed from the 8-bit gen already. Because the only trouble with the modern gen, you need games that have a bit more depth. So it'd have to be something like, well, actually, and I believe, and somebody has called dibs on doing this, and it's actually Snatcher. So it came out for the MSX, and it was a game way ahead of its time. And I do believe one of my compatriots from Collectivision is still calling dibs on doing that for the Dreamcast, and also on modern consoles like Xbox One and the Wii U. So that could be pretty good. What are your thoughts on VR? Do you like Do you think, like the early 90s, it will fade away, or do you think it's the future of gaming? I was actually into VR quite a bit. I was a very heavy supporter of it, very excited of it when it came round the first time, which was, I think it was Virtuosity with the stand-up ones where you stood in a platform and put on goggles and everything like that. I actually owned one of those machines in the store that I ran. I have several books on VR programming that I got when I was doing computer science at uni. It was around that phase, and I was into 3D and everything like that. That led off to other non-game related things that I worked on, that 3D work, but I was very much heavily into VR. But it went away because the technology wasn't quite up to it. Now today's modern VR, the technology's almost there, but I still don't think our current consoles are up to the task of generating an immersive level of 3D. And you know, as I'm making this video, it's only just been announced the price of the VR handset from the now owned Facebook main provider, and it's like $500. So it's, you know, it's a high level of entry. Until you get that sort of thing down to a more consumer level, and like it comes with every headset and becomes part of the thing, it's really not going to take off. So I still think VR is going to flounder around for a little while. I did like the demonstration, and I think it was last year's E3, of the 3D environment that was projected onto your vision like it was a hologram. You can't see it unless you wear the glasses. That was done by Microsoft. I thought that was quite innovative. I can see that sort of idea succeeding more than large goggles that you have to sit on your head and have a completely immersive environment like that. So that's probably my pick on what will succeed in the short term. But longer term, as the technology gets better, we'll have to wait and see. I still think that the VR headsets are just too heavy still. So, alright, thank you very much for those questions. And actually, I've absolutely jumped. That was actually a question from Lilac Ford for his number 3, so very bad of me. So the actual third question from iGuru Revolution was, what would be 2 gaming series franchises you would mesh together to make a new game? Let's say what genre the new game would be. Who would you like? They're really hard questions, these ones. What would you mesh together? Well, I mean, I suppose it's been done in the modern generation. It's the mash of shooting games, but with an adventuring component. I mean, the ones with a story, like The Last of Us, that has highlighted the, you know, that you can add a shooter together and have a story, and the balance is right, and it's a very hard balance to get. Those games are very expensive to make. But as far as franchises and things, I suppose I'm not a heavy franchise person, so it's a little hard to pick. So anyway, thank you for your questions. So we have video questions. As I said, I'll do the rest of Lilac Ford's in a minute. Sorry about that. So Big G from SA, which is South Africa, has some video questions for us. Let's go look at those now.
The first one, my favorite, or one of my favorite systems, is the MSX systems. What is your favorite MSX1 machine and why? They come in different shapes, sizes and colors. Which one is your favorite one amongst all the MSX1 systems, and why do you believe it's your favorite? So question number 2. Now in South Africa here, and I'm sure there's a lot of South Africans living in Australia. I think half of them have moved over to Australia and New Zealand and so forth. One of the delicacies that we eat here in South Africa is biltong. And have you ever eaten biltong? If you're a meat lover, you'll know what biltong is. It's a treat that we all live by, and you know, I ate a packet today for lunch. So it's do you eat biltong? Third question. I'm a great fisherman. I enjoy fishing. I love fishing here in South Africa. Now there in Tasmania, you know, you have plenty of water around you there. Do you fish? And if you do fish, what is the biggest fish that you've ever caught? So yeah, Tony, those are the 3 questions that I'm posting to you. And all the best with the channel. Keep up the hard work and keep posting the videos. And yeah, cheers from me.
Alright, thank you Big G. First question, which is really easy. Favourite MSX1 machine would have to be my Spectravideo 738 Express, which is a little cheat because it is a machine that was brought out late in the MSX1 era, but before the MSX2 standards had been finalised, and Spectravideo wanted to get the machine out for a particular release period. So it actually has an MSX2 graphics chip in it, space for the video, for the extra RAM, and space for an onboard clock, and can be upgraded to an MSX2. But it was shipped as an MSX1 machine, and it had an inbuilt 3.5-inch disk drive, and it's just the machine that I, used the most back in the day, and was a fantastic development machine. It ran CPM, ran MSX DOS, and obviously MSX Basic. Played all the games that I wanted. And I did a lot of my later MSX development on that machine, so I have great fondness for it. So it's definitely my favourite MSX1 machine. So your next question, have you ever eaten bull tongue? I take it you're saying bull tongue. Pardon me. I believe I have when I was younger. I don't think I've ever eaten the dried variety that you're talking about, which is almost like I've lost the word now. We don't have that lot of stuff of preserved meats around in the general shops. You'd have to go into a more specialist store. It is around. I have seen it, and I do believe I had some freshly cooked bull tongue that my mother prepared for me many years ago, and she used to do that on a semi-regular basis. That was one of her favourite things. But it's one of those things that have fallen away from the common availability around here in Australia. So, yeah, not for a while, but I have. Now, next question, do you fish, and biggest fish you have ever caught? I definitely do fish. Although, I call on the services of my father-in-law. He has a very nice boat. He's quite happy with his boat now. Dual engines on the back makes it very reliable and very smooth ride. He mostly prefers to get crayfish. Is the main thing that he's going after. I don't blame him. It's quite nice. And also he puts down shark lines, and yes, that is to catch shark. I know some people aren't into that, but we don't waste any of it. We eat shark, and there are plenty of sharks around. We're not overfishing particular species or anything like that. But I suppose the biggest fish that I have been part of catching, it's still not really personally me catching it, was quite a large shark. And yes, it was very nice. Although I will say we caught a smaller mako shark recently, and that was much nicer to eat. But other than that, if you go into smaller ones, we have a lot of salmon farms down here as well, and one time there was a large net ripped from quite a mature net, so quite a lot of salmon got dumped into the bay, and those salmon were pretty huge. We caught, I think we caught like 8 of them. We had to, divide it up all amongst us, and I even had to make a trip home just also on the meat, and we ate salmon for a while. Salmon's one of our more favourite fish to eat down here because of the availability. I know it's very expensive elsewhere, but there is lots of fish farms down here. And actually my second eldest daughter just recently got a job working at a shop that sells salmon products. So we actually get a discount when we go buy it now too, which is fantastic. We've been enjoying some of that over the Christmas break. So if I get time in the editing, I might add some pictures of the fish if I can find them. So thanks Big G for those questions. So next we have from Ash81B4U. Desert Island, 1 game, 1 games machine, 1 snack and 1 drink. I take it you get unlimited quantities of the snack and drink, otherwise you get hungry. But you need 1 game, and it needs to be something that's going to last you a while. I would probably go for it's a hard one. isn't it? You'd want something with some teeth in it. I think you'd have to go with a machine with an open world environment. Now, I know the modern machines aren't very rugged or anything like that, but I'd have to go with something like Skyrim. If I only had one game and that's all I had to do and focus on, I'd want a game that I could play for ages. So something like Skyrim, an open world game where I could have a character, build it up, and then you can play it again using a different character, so it actually lasts you quite a long time. So that would be, and I'd probably play that on the PS3. There you go. And I actually have quite enjoyed playing the PS3 throughout its history, so just don't play it very much at the moment because I've got a PS4 and I don't have enough time to play other games. Now, one snack and one drink. Would have to have ginger beer, and the snack would just have to be it would have to be salt and vinegar potato chips. Absolutely love salt and vinegar potato chips, and they have a good advantage of giving you extra salt and making you thirsty so you can have more of the drink. Number 2, if you could, what current gen game would you make a version of for 8-bit computers? I think I've really messed up the order of these questions, haven't I? Because I think I've already answered that one. So sorry about that, Ash. I'm not going to try and re-edit this. I'm obviously in a scrambled way today. Number 3, if you could, what 8-bit game would you remake for the current gen? So I said I think I've answered those two things previously meshed up into iGuru's questions above. So sorry about that, Ash, but thank you very much for the questions. So Lilac Floyd, I've already answered your number 3 question. Really should just be crossing these off as I'm doing them, shouldn't I? This is very disorganised today. In my defence, it's actually quite warm here today. If money was no object and you had enough space, what 3 arcade cabs would you own? Oh, this is an excellent question. I'd have to have a Star Wars cab. A sit-down Star Wars cab. That's the way to have the definitive experience with them. No questions asked, that would be my number 1, straight off the top. Now, as a number 2, I would actually go with a Defender cabinet. They're actually quite unique because of the button layout and the joysticks and everything like that, and they look very impressive. And I could play, it's a hard game, it will take me a long time to master that. And my 3rd one would actually be a Robotron. I would absolutely love a Robotron. I don't think, there's Smash TV, the sequel as well, but no, it'd have to be a Robotron. Yeah, I'd have to go over a Robotron. So definitely they would be my 3 top arcade machines that I'd absolutely love to have an original, actual version of. They would be worth having a real cabinet. If you want to know an also ran, I reckon I'd love an Asteroids and Asteroids Deluxe. Just a game that I love, if it doesn't show from what games I write myself. Number 2, what do you think Atari, Commodore, ST Amiga could have done, if anything, back in the day to compete with the growing popularity of PC gaming and 16-bit consoles of the early mid-90s? I think both of them, and this is the gaming angle, key mistakes they made in their design was neither of them progressed the joystick. So both of them only had a single button, fire button, which, looking at the era, you're going into the era of beat 'em ups and fighting games where more buttons were required, and even most of the shoot 'em ups then progressed beyond a single button. So one of the key errors they made was only allowing single button joysticks, so it really limited the controllers they had. They were both quite expensive to start with, but they stayed around for a while. And also, because of rushing, neither of them, they thought raw 6800, 16-bit power, high resolution memory back things. One started with a blitter, the other one got a blitter later, a little bit too late. But what did they forget over this? The simple thing that why consoles were better at the time was that they had sprites, hardware sprites, so that the main processor isn't tied up with writing your action graphics to the screen. So neither the Atari ST or the Amiga were suited to action type games, and as soon as you started doing too much, they slowed down. They were capable of making some very pretty looking games and very interesting, but it was hard to make playable games. Whereas the consoles, even though they technically were made from simpler hardware, because their graphics processors were able to overlay sprites, and by that stage the Super Nintendo and the Genesis could actually do quite large sprites, the games that you could make on them were the ones that the people wanted to play, which is more of the arcade type games. There were some pretty decent versions of arcade games on those computers, especially later on, but you really had to, it's the effort in the programming that comes down to it. You can't spend so long making a game that you don't make any money on it, otherwise it doesn't make sense. So both of them, that's what they could have done. And if they had have just had that simple extra bit of hardware, and it was simple, it goes all the way back to the older systems of overlaying hardware sprites, it would have made a big difference. So there we go, key mistakes there. And his next question was the VR question. I'm sorry for being such a scrambled mess in this final one. Okay, now we have another video question from Stig's World. I've known Stig for quite some time. So here we go, here's his questions.
So my first question is, what is your holy grail of gaming? The one item that has always eluded you and you would pretty much give anything to own. What is that item? My second question is, if you had the opportunity to work for any games developer back when they were in their prime, in their heyday, what games developer would you jump at a chance to work for, and why? And my third and final question is, if you could change one thing from your history of gaming, what would that be? Be it a regret or an opportunity missed. What is the one thing you would like to change from your history of gaming? So that's it, just a quick video. That's my 3 questions for Tony.
So his first question is Holy Grail of gaming. What is the one item that I aspire to get? I did actually get one of my Holy Grails recently, which was somebody who were doing the trade with the Spectre Video 728 machine sent me a copy of Elite for MSX. It's one of the games that I played back in the day, didn't actually own an original copy, made a copy of my own from the one in the shop. I never bought one, and I got that. So that's ticked off one of my grails. I would, and so I've never actually played these ones, and I don't play them for the very reason that I would like to get them one day. It's the Metal Gear games for the MSX. You've got Metal Gear 1 and Metal Gear 2. They have always been very expensive while I've been collecting the MSX. That's why I don't have them. They're worse now, of course, as a lot of MSX games are. The prices are only going up. So I'd put them as my Holy Grails, because really, now I've reached the stage in my collection, I have a lot of games now, and this year I'm going to try and focus on the systems that I really, really like, which is like the MSX and Coleco. I may still get the odd game here and there for some of the other systems. Like there's a couple more Jaguar games I wouldn't mind getting, but I'm really slowing down on the other ones so I can focus a bit more. So Stig's second question was if there was any particular developer back in the day that I could have gone to work for, which one would it be? And without a doubt it would have been Konami. They made the games that I absolutely fell in love with for the MSX. They supported the system greatly, and it just would have been fantastic to be part of that team back in the day, working on the machine that I loved. I don't even hesitate with saying that one. And there's probably not even a close second. So they really did the best. I suppose a marginal second would be at Compile. I love shoot 'em ups. I would love working on that team as well. So, and I'm sure things would have been a little bit different. So, and that leads into his next question of change one thing back in the day. I actually got a letter from ASCII Corporation in Japan back in the day, offering to buy some of my games. I was only about 16. The letter was, worded very loosely, and it sort of asked, they were asking for 1,000 sample copies of my games. In retrospect, I think it was a sample order, but nothing about price was talked about, and cost and logistics, and I never did anything about it. Because at the time I was producing everything on cassette tapes myself, and I just could not understand how I would be able to produce items in that quantity. So it's a big regret from back in the day, but yeah, what can you do? So excellent questions from Stick. Next question is from Retro Fakes. I hope I've pronounced that correctly. They're all semi-related. Do you collect the Game & Watch? Now, I used to really like the Game & Watch systems. I used to sell them at the shop that I worked for back in the day. I used to be able to play quite a lot of them upside down. Once again, couldn't afford a lot of them. I do have a couple of them. My favourite would be the Donkey Kong Jr. little handheld. I have managed to get very tatty copies of Donkey Kong and Donkey Kong 2. They're not in the best condition. I would like to collect them, but they're really unattainable price-wise. Really don't see them a lot at markets and garage sales, and I probably don't go to enough of those to be able to get them for the right, cheap prices. Buying them on eBay is just not an option. They go for way too much money, but they are very interesting units that I like, and I enjoy playing the ones that I have. So, what are your favourite games within the Game & Watch series? Well, it'd have to be those Donkey Kong ones, like I mentioned, Donkey Kong Jr. and things like that. I mean, some of the others are quite novel. I like the original Parachute as well, because it's one of the first ones. But definitely Donkey Kong Jr. would have to be my favourite. And what are my thoughts in relations to retro LCD games in general? It was an interesting era, and I actually quite clever at how good some of the games were. Obviously, some of the larger cabinet LED ones were they were getting quite advanced with colour and everything like that, but even some of the LCD games and the complexity of the gameplay was getting quite good as they went through and they discovered what they could do. So it was an interesting era of gaming, and you put into relation to what you can now get in your 3DS type of systems and the other portable handheld systems compared to into those days, and you can see that market has survived all this time. Okay, so our final person doing question is Michael Van Leeuwen. I think that's right. And I really miss the 80s. Everything seemed to be much simpler and much more uncomplicated in computer land than it is today. No DLC, no Frogger 11, just some straightforward computers and many awesome games in 16-bit colours or less. What do you miss about those days? And it is that simplicity. It's the games you can quite literally pick a game, plug it in, and have some fun and play it for a short period of time. And there are also games you could sink your teeth into and play more, and everything was about the story and the gameplay. Whereas a lot of modern games a lot of it's about fluff, and there's not a lot of game there, and people are saying they spent $100 and they've finished the game 4 or 5 hours later. And you imagine all the work that went into that game, hundreds of man hours and everything like that, for such a small experience. In the end, it's a little bit of a disappointment, isn't it? So I suppose that's the thing, we miss a simplicity. But it is so much harder to make games for modern systems. You have to have so many resources behind you. What is the best way to collect 80s, 90s computers without having to mortgage your house twice? Patience is the thing. Systems will show up eventually. You don't necessarily go on eBay. I mean, yes, they do crop up on eBay. You have to be patient, and you have to pay what you're prepared to pay for them. But other than that, you need to go around, I think, garage sales, because people don't often take those things to the flea markets and things like that. You've got to be there at the right time when somebody's cleaning out their garage and finds this old computer that they don't, sometimes they won't even know what it is, and hopefully it doesn't end up as landfill, because I'm sure a lot of actual retro computers, more so than consoles with their cartridges and everything like that, people can say, oh, people are interested in those. But an old computer keyboard, people don't seem to hold much attachment to them, so they're probably being thrown out all the time. And that's the other place, is the actual tip shops. In here in Australia we have shops attached to our tips, which are like recycling centres, and sometimes you can get lucky and find machines there. Of course, a lot of these machines need to be repaired and fixed. What 3 YouTube channels, not computer related, would you recommend us to check out? Could be anything as long as it isn't computer related. Okay, my 3, and I mean these are not small, these are just other channels that I like to watch on occasion. It's Video from Space. You get lots of things on space in general. I've always been a space nut. Things from the people on the space station, and things about rocket launches and everything like that. I like watching rocket launches. My next one, and I quite enjoy this channel a lot, is Screen Junkies, because I like my films, and they do really good reviews and discussions about films, and they're all pretty geeky and like them, the Marvels and the Star Warses and the Star Treks, and he gets in quite a good range of guests based on the topic they're discussing about. And I've been watching those videos on a regular basis. Don't necessarily watch the longer ones, but it's a good entertainment channel. Another one, I know this is not everybody's cup of tea, and I don't watch every video from them either, but I watch Nerdist. It's actually quite a good, fun way to hear our, it's not just about computers at all. Hardly, most of it is about popular culture. So, obviously the movies, Star Wars and Star Trek and Marvel superheroes, all that, and obviously, what everybody thought of the latest Superman versus Batman trailer. Which basically, in my opinion, I don't need to see the film now because they've spoiled it. Now, looking at this list, I realise that there is one more set of questions. And they're from the person who won one of the prizes, which is Crow. So I'll go fix that, and I'll be back in a minute. So after checking, I discovered I had actually missed 1, 2, 3, 4 questions, including one video question, which is the one that I remembered. So, closing them off, and they have only asked a couple of questions each. So, The Shadows knows, are you still selling the MSX games you have made? Not all of them at the moment. I do actually have most of the materials to republish some of them. Recently I published a collection of a large number of my early games on disc for the MSX with nice packaging and everything like that. And that is available on both my website and my Electric Adventures Facebook page. There's a shop icon on both, and it's the only one product. The book that I wrote back in the day, published in 1991, I am probably 80-90% of the way through retyping that up. I'm going to add the 6 articles I published in one of the magazine, which went beyond basic, because it is intrinsically an MSX Inspector Video basic manual with extended bits. I'm going to add that to that book, and I'm just checking out the publishing options, but I'm going to hopefully publish that in electronic and physical form. Only low run with the physical form, so I will have more of my titles on, now that I've got that shop set up and the Facebook page, and I have some of the materials. I'm going to republish them. I'll use original covers where appropriate. Some of the other titles, the cover designs was pretty ordinary. The next one that will be released, I think I've put snippets on my Facebook page, is called Stranded, which is the largest text adventure that I wrote. I've already designed a simple, better cover for that. I just didn't quite get a chance to go get the covers printed properly on a good printer, rather than mine one here on good paper, before Christmas. I'll be doing that very shortly. So, very good question, thank you. Matropolis asks, what Australian TV show, film or cartoon would you like to see made into a game? The trouble with that is quite a lot of Australian TV properties have already been made into games. So one of the first things that came to mind was Mad Max, and there's actually, how we say, the early Mad Max movies. I don't remember very many games made for those. But apparently the newest Mad Max Fury Road game is supposed to be very good, and it's actually a game I actually looked out for it in the Boxing Day sales but didn't see a copy, unfortunately. So, and I do have a few other games to play, so I've sworn off buying any more modern games until I finish a couple, so I'll definitely be looking for them. Good question. Next set of questions are from Hellfire64. Just made it in before the end. When you are done with your Let's Make a Retro Game series, would you consider making a C64 game for the RGCD compo, or in brackets, or as a general release? It is the general idea that as part of the Let's Make a Retro Game series, I'm going to expand it out and learn some other systems, because I always want to make games for both the Atari 8-bit and the Commodore 64. Part of that process was learning 6502 assembler, because I've been mainly a Z80 assembler. I've actually done that as part of my learning how to write original Nintendo games, and also more so in the extended version that you get for the Super Nintendo. So I've learnt the processor now, so now I just need to learn the architecture of the C64. So it is a definite possibility and something that I am definitely interested in. Whether or not I'd be able to write something on a system that I'm not as familiar with that's good enough to get anywhere in those competitions, but it's fun taking part. I would love to, so definitely we'll see how things go. And I'm going to try and make 2016 the year of homebrew, because it really is the thing that I like the most. What would be your favourite controller? I'm going to do my favourite controller for the older 8-bit systems, and this is what I would have used back in the day, and this is my one from back in the day, and it's a Waiko Command and Control bat with 2 fire buttons. I have since modified this particular one so that it's an MSX, and these 2 buttons are independent MSX fire buttons. But I really like this one. I get all my high scores on Sequest on the Atari 2600 using not this particular one, but another one of these, and they're great choices. They used to make the arcade control, so you know, it's very much arcade. And in general principle, I like arcade sticks. Because I'm not very good at firing with my thumb, I find all hand controllers very difficult to use, so I haven't picked any other more modern hand controllers. Out of the arcade sticks that I have, it's a real toss-up between this one and the Neo Geo stick, but I'm going to go with this one. So this is a Sega Saturn, what is it, HSS 0104 on the back it's got here. It has all clicky buttons, nice layout. The buttons are in a nice curve pattern like the Neo Geo, and it has extras. It's comfortable to use, and I play Saturn games a bit and quite enjoy it. I have another, I probably don't have a stick for the PC Engine that I'm 100% happy with. I like the ones that I have, but not as much as this stick. So I hope that answers your question. Alright, and to finish off, I'll put this one at the end, is some video questions from Crow. Let's go and have a look at those now.
So, I wanted to participate in your Q&A, and I thought of 3 questions, but then I forgot one. So at the moment, I only have 2 questions. So my first question is, out of, or rather should I say, are there any consoles, computers, or any basic hardware that you don't have that you're still looking into getting? Or are you pretty much completely set with your hardware collection and you're focusing on software? And my second question is, how do you like your steak? For example, I like my steak rare, covered in horseradish, and with a side of a loaded baked potato. When I say loaded, we're talking sour cream, bacon, cheese, sliced cheddar cheese, anything else you might want to throw on there. And, you know, what you typically might want to drink with that. I always drink unsweetened iced tea. So, yeah, again, congrats, and looking forward to your answers.
So, thank you very much, Crow, for asking those questions. So, only 2 more to go. So, any console or computers that I'm still after? On the console side of things, I don't think I am actually. I think I am complete as far as consoles are concerned. Yeah, but computers, I'm still trying to complete my TI-99XX chipset collection, and there's one machine that has eluded me, which is a Memotech MTX. So it's another machine that is MSX-like but not MSX compatible. Quite an interesting little machine. There were really not many of them brought into Australia though. They do come up for auction on eBay on a regular basis, but they also get sold for, you know, too much more, and plus when you've got to consider freight and things like that into it. Yeah, so maybe one day. As far as other computers, there are a couple of computers in my Atari 8-bit collection. Once again, in no particular hurry or anything like that, but I would love an original Atari 800. Don't have one of those. And the other two XL models. I don't have a 600 or a 1200. The 1200 is probably the worst machine in the entire Atari 8-bit line because it's the least compatible out of all of them. It was the first one in the XL line until they realised their mistake. It was too expensive, had all the compatibility problems, so thus they produced the 800 and 600 in a similar one, and they didn't have either of those problems but were much more reliable than the older ones. So there we go. So yeah, I'd say I'm almost there. I really am not pining after any particular pieces of hardware, so I do tend to just concentrate on the software side of things. And the final question, so the very last question is, my steak, how do I like it cooked and prepared? I definitely like my steak medium rare, and I quite like both pepper and mushroom sauce, although I probably defer to mushroom sauce on most cases. I like it with a side of nice fat chips or scallop potatoes, and a nice bit of salad, depending on the time of the year. Winter, I might go with the roast potatoes and vegetables with it as well. But in the normal sense of things, I'll normally have nice fat chips and a nice fresh salad to go with it. So I thank everybody who has asked questions. It really caught me off guard with the number of people who asked questions. Very muchly appreciated. I hope you've enjoyed my answers and that they haven't been too chaotic. And yes, the number of questions, I did not think it would take me this long to get through them all, but there really were such a lot of questions. I haven't actually counted them to give you a total now. So thank you to all my viewers and all my subscribers. I really do appreciate you watching and commenting and asking me questions. So I'll have to maybe do this late this year, for this year. So have other things to get out of the way first though, of course. So alright, I'm Electric Adventures. Thank you very much for all your questions and your viewership, and I'll catch you later.